So now that we talked about the OSI model, we need to talk about the TCP IP model. So what we're going to do in today's lecture is we're going to do an introduction to the TCP IP model. Again, just like the OSI model, I don't expect you to memorize everything I'm talking about here in this lecture, so remember this is just an introduction to the TCP IP model. So let's go ahead and let's talk about it. So remember, the OSI model is a conceptual framework and it was never implemented. However, on the flip side, the TCP IP model was. And so if we're thinking about, we're talking about the internet and networks today, this is the most common used protocol suite in the networking world. And it's really the protocol suite that the internet was built upon. So when you're out there connecting to a network at your work or your school and you're connecting to the internet, you are on a TCP IP network. And so it is the standard today for computer networking. And pretty much everything is on a TCP IP network for the most part. And it is very similar to the OSI model, and it's a 4-layer model instead of a 7-layer model, but you'll see the difference on the next slide when I talk about them. Now, in regards to the name, it's based upon two major protocols. There's the TCP protocol and the IP protocol, and we'll talk about those in the future, so don't worry about it. Just understand that that's how it was named. So let's go ahead and jump to the next slide. So let's take a look at these two different suites side by side. So we have the OSI model right here, and we have our TCP IP model on the other side. And what you'll notice is that we have the application layer, the presentation layer, and the session layer side by side. Now on the flip side, we only have the application layer. Same thing goes for down here. We have the network interface layer, but we have the data link and the physical layer. And so let me draw a line here as well. And so what they did is, all they pretty much did, and I'll put a line up here to show the difference, is that instead of naming these three layers that work at the host layer, they decided to bundle them together and call the application layer when they implemented it with the TCP IP. These two layers are the same. So our transport layer is the same as our host-to-host transport layer here. Our network layer is the same as our internet layer. And down here at the bottom again, they combined the data link and the physical layer on the OSI and just called it the network interface layer. So if we think about it, all the different things that we're going to talk about down here when we talk about the OSI model, it's going to align to this one layer right here. It's going to align to the network interface layer. And then same thing when we talk about the OSI model and we talk about these three top layers, it's going to align with this layer. And then whenever we talk about these two, they're going to have their own separate layers at the TCP IP model suite. So that's the difference, and that's how they align. It's really not that big of a difference between the two. It's just that they bundled certain layers together in the OSI model and they implemented it as a TCP IP. Now, we talked about the TCP IP being a protocol suite. And that's really what it is. And so when networks communicate, they use protocols to communicate. And so we have these communication protocols, and they all act at different layers because they have different roles in communication. And so what we're going to talk about in this course is, in different lectures, we're going to talk about some of these more important and more common protocols. And for example, some of the ones that we already talked about, we talked about FTP a little bit. We talked about HTTP, and that's up here as well. So we talked about HTTP. We talked about some of our mail protocols. Again, those are up here as well. We didn't really talk about any of these. Now, these are the ones that are really taking place on the network, down here at the bottom. All this stuff up here takes place on your computer, interacts with applications, and then they interact with the network down here. So that's our really quick introduction to the TCP IP model, suite of protocols. So we talked about what it was, and we talked about how it relates to the OSI model, and I gave you a brief overview of the different protocols in the suite. So again, you don't have to memorize all this. I just want you to understand what it is, how it differs from the OSI model, and how it has a bunch of protocols that interact on the network at different layers in the TCP IP model. So again, we're going to talk about the TCP IP model and the different protocols in detail in future lectures, just like we are with the OSI. So just stay tuned for that later in the course. Don't worry about memorizing it now. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the next lecture.